The most powerful king in the world went completely mad in the middle of a bright sunny afternoon. Nebuchadnezzar was standing above Babylon, gold temples glowing below him, walls spreading as far as the eye could see. He opened his mouth and spoke. Before he could finish speaking, his bones started bending and his body hit the floor. His hands hit the stone floor, his fingers bent like claws. His back arched toward the ground as if something was pulling him down. Guards rushed forward, screaming. His eyes were open, but he saw nothing. His mouth moved, but made no sound. He crawled across the palace roof, fingers clawing, foam dripping from his mouth. His hair grew long and tangled, hanging past his shoulders. He bent to the ground and ate grass in front of his wife. How does the greatest king in the world end up like this? We will show you the warnings he ignored, the words that pushed him into madness, and the darker truth behind his downfall. To understand the truth behind this humiliation, we must begin from where it all started. Jerusalem sat on a hill. From a distance, it looked unbreakable. The walls were not just tall, they were thick, so thick that soldiers built roads across the top of them. 2 chariots could ride side by side up there without touching. The city had stood for centuries. Inside the walls, gold bowls and lampstands that Solomon had made 300 years before still sat in their places, still shining. The priests told the people no enemy could touch what God had claimed as his own. The people believed them. They didn't know what was about to happen. Nebuchadnezzar was 23 when his father died, and handed him the most powerful army on earth. He had already watched nation after nation open its gates rather than face what was coming. He did not ask them to surrender. He arrived, and they surrendered. When he turned south toward Jerusalem, his army did not slow down. They crossed the desert in columns so long you could not see the end of them. When they marched, the dust rose so high it was visible from Jerusalem's walls 3 days before the first soldier arrived. 3 days of watching that cloud grow. 3 days of knowing what it meant. Nebuchadnezzar's commander walked the city walls and reported back.
The walls are thick. This will take time.
Good. Block every road. Seal every well. Nothing moves in or out.
The people inside are praying. They believe their God will save them.
How foolish. Their God has not stopped me yet.
The trap was working. No water, no food, no help from Egypt. People started dying inside those walls. Children first, then the elderly. The young king of Jerusalem, Jehoiakim, looked at his starving people and walked out through the gates with his hands open. Nebuchadnezzar took him, his family, and his officials. His men stripped the temple bare. Gold bowls, lampstands, everything loaded onto wagons. Among the captives, there was a young man named Daniel, 16 years old. He had never left Jerusalem. He kept looking back until the walls disappeared behind the hills. He did not know that one day he would stand in front of this same king and say things no one else was willing to say. Nebuchadnezzar left a new king behind in Jerusalem, a man named Zedekiah. One instruction: stay loyal, pay tribute every year, and the city lives. Zedekiah agreed. For a few years he kept his word. Then Egypt came whispering with promises of freedom, and he listened. He stopped paying. He made the deal in secret. Word reached Babylon within a month. Nebuchadnezzar came back. This time, the trap around Jerusalem did not give them 2 years. By the time the walls finally broke, the city was already half dead. Zedekiah ran in the night. They caught him near Jericho and brought him in chains to the king. Nebuchadnezzar gave his order. Zedekiah's sons were brought forward one by one and killed in front of their father. Every one of them. Then soldiers stepped forward and gouged out Zedekiah's eyes. The last thing he ever saw was his children. After that, they burned the temple to the ground. 400 years of history, gone in a single day. Jerusalem was left with nothing, just smoke above an empty hill. Nebuchadnezzar rode home certain of one thing. He had entered God's city. He had burned God's temple, and nothing had stopped him. Back in Babylon, the palace walls were covered in blue tile that shone in the sun. Gardens hung from the terraced walls. Towers rose until their tops disappeared into the clouds. The king walked through all of it and felt like the world belonged to him. At night, he went to sleep with no fear. He always did. But something changed that night. His chest was wet with sweat. His eyes snapped open. He looked around the room. Lamps burning low. Guards at the door. Nothing there. He had seen something in his sleep that made him feel a fear he had never felt in any war. And the feeling would not leave. Those gold bowls sat in Solomon's temple for 300 years. Nebuchadnezzar carried them home like trophies. He could not see what was building inside him, behind every wagon and every new tower. And that kind of blindness does not only belong to kings. If you have ever felt completely untouchable, like you had it all figured out, and then one moment changed everything and reminded you that you were never really in control, mention "I have been there" in the comments below. Right now, the king of Babylon sits alone in his palace, shaking from a dream he cannot understand. He has conquered nations. He has burned the temple of God itself. Nothing has ever frightened him. Until tonight. Nebuchadnezzar sat in the dark, hands on his knees, staring at the far wall. The dream had come to him sharp and clear. By morning, every detail had slipped away, except the fear. He summoned every wise man in Babylon, astrologers, magicians, diviners. They filed in before the throne.
Last night, I had a dream. Tell me what I dreamed. Then tell me what it means.
Great King, tell us the dream, and we will give you the interpretation.
If you can give the interpretation, you can tell me the dream. Tell me both, or you will all be killed.
No man on earth can do what the king asks. Not one king in history has ever demanded this.
Then what good are you?
He ordered them all put to death, every wise man in Babylon. Daniel heard about the order and asked for one night. He went home, knelt with his 3 friends, and prayed until the answer came. Daniel saw exactly what the king had seen. A statue so tall that he could not see the top, head of pure gold, chest and arms of silver, belly of bronze, legs of solid iron. But the feet were part iron, part clay, cracked, crumbling. The whole weight of that statue resting on feet that were already breaking apart, fell from somewhere above. It struck the feet. The crack shot from the bottom all the way to the top in one instant. The iron legs buckled, the bronze belly split, the silver chest collapsed. The gold head hit the ground last. Then it all turned to dust, fine as ash. The wind took it, and there was nothing left. But the stone did not stop. It grew into a rock. The rock grew into a hill. The hill grew into a mountain that covered the entire plain. Daniel stood before the throne and spoke without flinching.
The God of heaven gave you this dream. The gold head, that is you. Your kingdom is the greatest on earth right now.
What comes after the gold?
A second kingdom, lesser than yours. Then a third, then a fourth. Iron that shatters everything. And finally, a divided kingdom. Part iron, part clay, that cannot hold itself together.
And the stone that came down from the sky?
A kingdom God himself will build. It will crush every kingdom before it. It will never end.
The throne room went silent. A boy he had marched across the desert in chains had just told him exactly what he had seen in the dark. Every detail correct. Nobody had told Daniel the dream. There was only one way he could have known. Nebuchadnezzar stood up slowly from the throne. Then he did something no one in that room had ever seen him do. He bowed to the floor in front of Daniel. He gave him authority over the whole province of Babylon.
Your God is the God of gods, the Lord of kings, a revealer of mysteries.
He meant every word. In that throne room, for one afternoon, the most powerful man alive understood he was not in charge. Then he walked outside. By nightfall, the dream felt like something that had come from the darkness. He had bowed. He had honored Daniel. He told himself that was enough. The dream was supposed to humble him. It was meant to remind him that even the greatest kingdoms eventually fall. Nebuchadnezzar understood that, but that was not the part that stayed with him. His mind kept returning to the head of gold. Daniel had said that gold represented him, the greatest kingdom on earth, the ruler standing above every other nation. If the God of heaven himself had declared him the greatest among all the kingdoms, then why shouldn't he be treated like a god by men? And the moment that thought took shape in his mind, Nebuchadnezzar summoned his builders. Because once a king begins to believe he is a god among men, he wants to be worshipped like one. Soon, the plain of Dura would see a 90-foot statue of pure gold rising from the earth. And before long, the entire empire would be given a choice: bow or burn. 3 men would choose the fire. On the plain of Dura, that statue rose 90 feet into the sky, blazing in the Babylonian sun. Every official in the empire had received the order. When the music plays, bow. Anyone who does not bow goes into the furnace. Thousands stood on that plain. The music started. Every person dropped to the ground. Every person except 3. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego stood straight. You could see them from across the field. They did not look around. They did not move. They just stood there while an empire pressed its face into the dirt at their feet. Word reached the king within minutes.
Is it true you will not worship my statue?
It is true.
I will give you one more chance. When the music plays, bow. If you do not, the furnace is ready. And what God can rescue you from my fire.
Our God can rescue us. He can pull us from your furnace and from your hands.
But even if he does not, we will not bow.
The room went still. Not one person moved. Nebuchadnezzar had faced armies. He had burned God's own temple and walked away without consequences. Not one king, general, or foreign god had ever looked back at him. The way these three men were looking at him now, they were not angry. They were not afraid. They simply did not care what he did to them. His hands tightened on the armrests of the throne. His face changed. He ordered the furnace heated 7 times hotter than it had ever been. So hot that the soldiers who carried Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to the door fell from the heat before they could step back. Nebuchadnezzar watched from his seat. Then he stood up.
Did we not throw 3 men into the fire? Bound?
3 men. Yes. Bound.
I see 4 men walking, unbound. And the 4th one looks like a son of the gods.
They walked out through the furnace door, robes clean, not a single strand of hair burned, not one thread blackened. They did not even carry the smell of smoke on their skin. Nebuchadnezzar walked toward them slowly and touched the fabric with his own hand. Nothing, not even warm. He turned and faced the crowd. For the first time in his life, he was standing in front of something he could not explain, punish, or command. He made a decree on the spot. He said no person in the empire could speak against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. At that time, he meant every word. But within a week, the reports from the eastern provinces arrived. New tribute. More territory. Another city offering surrender. The officials bowed the usual way. The court returned to its usual sound. The fear faded. But Daniel was still in that palace. He had seen this king bow to God twice and walk back out into the sunlight, believing the world belonged to him. What happens to a king who ignores every warning given to him? What does God do when a king's pride grows too large for even heaven to ignore? Nebuchadnezzar was about to find out. That night, he had another dream. He saw a massive tree that touched the sky. Every bird on earth nested in its branches. Every animal on earth rested beneath it. The whole world ate from its fruit. Then a voice came from above and said,
"Cut it down. Strip every branch. Scatter everything beneath it. But leave the stump in the ground, bound with iron and bronze."
Nebuchadnezzar woke up with that voice still in his ears. He called Daniel in and described the tree. Daniel went silent for a full hour. The king watched and waited. Daniel had never hesitated before.
My lord, I wish this dream were about your enemies.
Tell me what it means.
The tree is you. Your greatness has grown until it reaches the sky. Every nation bows to your power. Every nation eats from what you provide.
And the voice that ordered it to be cut down?
That is God's decree. You will be driven from your throne. You will live in the open fields and eat like an animal. Rain will soak your body every night. 7 years will pass before you acknowledge that God rules over every kingdom on earth and gives power to whoever he chooses.
Is there a way out?
Stop! Break away from your sins! Show mercy to those who have nothing! Maybe then this will not come.
Nebuchadnezzar heard every word. He dismissed Daniel and walked back into the palace. Months passed. The city kept growing. His generals kept winning. The treasury kept filling. The dream started to feel like something he had imagined. Then one afternoon, 12 months later, he walked out onto the palace roof. He stood at the edge and looked out over everything he had built. Walls so wide that entire streets sat across the top of them. Towers above the rooftops. Temples with gold at their peaks. The river cutting through the middle. Markets, roads, soldiers and traders from 50 nations. All of it his.
Is this not the great Babylon I have built? By my own mighty power, for my own glory?
He did not finish. A voice came from directly above before the last word left his mouth.
Your kingdom is taken from you. Now!
Before he could say something, his bones started bending and his body hit the floor. His hands hit the stone floor. His fingers bent like claws. His back arched toward the ground as if something was pulling him down. Guards rushed in. He bit the first one who grabbed him. He threw the second into the wall. His wife stood at the doorway, frozen, watching the king of the world drop to his knees and press his face into the stone. Foam dripped from his mouth. He bent down and pulled grass from the cracks between the roof tiles with his teeth. 4 men dragged him toward the palace gates. He fought every step. Then the gates opened, and he ran on all fours, past his own soldiers, past his own servants, into the open fields beyond the walls. He was still recognizable at first, dirty, wild-eyed. Servants from the palace were sent to watch him in the fields beyond the walls. They said he sometimes still stood upright, that something behind his eyes still flickered, then it stopped flickering. By the second year, he had stopped standing entirely. He moved low and fast, close to the ground. He slept in open fields. He stopped looking at the city. He stopped looking at anything. Eventually, the servants stopped watching. There was nothing left to report. 3 more years, then 4, then 5. Babylon kept running. His officials ran the empire without sitting on the throne. Nobody said his name out loud anymore. The greatest king on earth had become something people looked away from. But his city did not fall. It was waiting. But would the king of Babylon ever walk back through those gates as a man? Or would he remain in the fields outside the city, filthy and wild, cleaning himself with his own saliva and grazing like cattle? 7 years passed before the answer came. Only then did the man who ran through those gates lift his head again. And when he did, the king of Babylon would come back. All those years, no palace, no throne, no name. A figure in the tall grass, on hands and knees, skin dark and cracked, nails curved long, hair hanging past his shoulders in thick tangled ropes. The rain had soaked him so many nights, his body had stopped reacting to the cold. Behind those walls, Babylon kept running. Nobody said his name out loud. Then, one morning, he stopped moving. He was on his knees in the open field, the way he had been every morning for 7 years. But this time, something was different. He lifted his face from the grass. He looked up at the sky. His thoughts cleared. All at once, he knew his name. He knew the city behind those walls. He knew the throne, the palace, the roof, and the words that had broken him. Every year of it, every detail. He stood up, shaking and filthy, grass still bent where he had been kneeling, and spoke out loud to the sky. God's kingdom lasts forever. Every person on earth is nothing before his power. He does whatever he chooses, and no one stops him. Then Nebuchadnezzar walked back toward Babylon. The gates opened. His counselors brought him back to the throne. His officials returned to their posts. The court reassembled as if the years had folded back. But the man who sat down on that throne was not the man who had crawled off the palace roof. He wrote the whole account himself, the dream, the warning, the 12 months he wasted after the last warning, the words on the roof, the 7 years in the field, and sent it to every nation in his empire.
I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and honor the King of Heaven. Everything he does is right. His ways are just. And those who walk in pride, he is able to bring low.
The man who burned God's temple and marched God's people across the desert sent that testimony to every corner of the world. Not a decree, not a record of victories, a confession about 7 years in the dirt. And the man who helped him find his way back was still in that palace, the same young boy who had looked back at Jerusalem until the hills blocked it from view. The one who told the king the truth when no one else dared. For years, his presence held something back. Evil moved carefully while Daniel was breathing. Kings feared doing wrong because he was still there. But Daniel's body was not built to last forever. The day came when the great prophet closed his eyes for the last time. The moment he stopped breathing, demons grew bold. Prophecy went silent. Click on the video being displayed on your screen to see all 7 things that happened the moment Daniel died.